Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for letting me spend some time with you. I do really appreciate your time. It really does matter. I also appreciate it when you hit those like buttons and share buttons because it just makes it easier for people to find us. It moves us up in the analytics and all those good things. So go ahead and try that. And if you're listening to the audio only, do yourself a favor, go to YouTube, Rumble, TNN, Tube, and look at the video, see my wonderful face, all that kind of stuff. I was always told I have a face for radio. So you might be glad you're listening to the audio only. Oh my goodness. See, sometimes I have to say something I don't want to say. I don't like having to deal with some of the things I have to deal with, but this is something that we need to address, something we need to be aware of, and something that we need to, in most cases, stop doing. Because there's been something in the news that's irritating, especially to me. And it seems to be the rising face of anti-Semitism among right-wing conservatives. And I will confess that being a right-wing conservative, I can say with complete certainty that not all of the right-wing conservative people are anti-Semitic. I certainly am not. I've been accused of a lot of things, right? I've been accused of being racist and prejudiced, but I think that my black friends would argue with that, I hope. I've said often that everyone is prejudiced to some degree. We all prejudge people we meet. Parents, when your children are old enough to start dating, I will guarantee you prejudge everybody they go out with. It's just that simple. You wonder if they're, if that's who you want your children to be hanging out with. Sometimes we prejudge the people on the street. We wonder if that person who's looking at us, are they trying to be friendly? Or are they sizing us up to be a victim? That's prejudging, okay? They don't have to be a different color. They don't have to be a different ethnicity. They don't have to dress differently. I freely admit I prejudge doctors. I prejudge lawyers. I'm looking for the ones who are going to give me the best care, the best advice, and that's being prejudiced. Prejudice can be both beneficial and it can be harmful if we do not use it properly. But moving on, the anti-Semitic movement is nothing new. It has existed since Moses said to Pharaoh, "Let my people go." That's how old anti-Semitism is. It became very apparent in the early church when the Jews refused to convert, and there was this new hybrid religion, and they said, "We are not going to be part of it." It's just, it was almost ridiculous the way people who considered themselves good Christians treated other people. That's been going on for quite a long time. Anti-Semitism really took on the form of nastiness and hatefulness during the Inquisition and later the Holocaust, right? That was the height. Martin Luther, he was famous for nailing his thesis to the door. He began being sympathetic to the Jews. He said, "Oh, we can convert them to Christianity." Why would they want to, right? Later, he would become extremely anti-Semitic, believing that Jews who didn't convert were a worthless waste of time. If you don't believe me, read some of the things he wrote, not just his thesis. Anti-Semitism grew among Protestants who believed that Jews killed Jesus when in fact it was the Romans who killed Jesus. But why let the facts get in the way of our hatred? Why let facts interrupt what we think, what we've been taught? There's always been a large part of the Christian culture who were taught to be anti-Semitic to some degree, to some extent. Many of them, refused to believe that Yeshua Jesus was in fact from the tribe of Judah. He was Jewish. I remember a vacation Bible school poster. And I wish that I would have been smart enough to take a picture of it, but I didn't. I should have. But it showed, Jesus happily carrying his King James Bible to Sunday school. Something that never happened, okay? And this type of propaganda among the Christian church has escalated the anti-Semitism problem. But why in the last few weeks do we seemingly see such a large surge in anti-Semitism among supposedly conservative Christians? The answer, I think, is obvious, but I'll explain it this way. Every revival has a catalyst, okay? The assassination of Charlie Kirk is such an event. It began a type or a kind of revival in the United States and really around the world. Christians are no longer afraid to admit who they are, and that's both good and bad. I'm just going to put that out there. It's good and bad. The good part is people are more openly praising our Creator. It's just not a Sunday morning hidden thing in behind closed church doors anymore. The bad part is those who tend to follow their denominational doctrine, their traditions, instead of the Bible. And sadly, a lot of Christians no longer read the Old Testament. They don't even, some of them don't know the Ten Commandments. They hear about it sometimes, but that's in the first part of the book. It doesn't apply to me. That was for those people at that time. They want to worship Jesus as God or as a God instead of worshiping the Creator himself, the Father. They mistakenly claim it was Jesus who created, right? They say, oh, Jesus is the creator. Just look at John. If it wasn't made through him, it didn't happen. Not quite. Not quite. Because they forget their own New Testament. I say that loosely. Paul's letter to the Colossians, 1:15, the Son is the image of the invisible God. He's the image, just like we are made in his image. But Colossians 1:15, the Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. Isn't that interesting? But, never mind the facts. My mind's already made up. You might hear that again. Never mind the facts. My mind's already made up. A lot of people are using this newfound freedom, if we can call it that, as a kind of revival to promote hate instead of love. They're using this to advance their own agenda instead of actually proclaiming what's in the Bible. Used this before. It's not really in the Bible, but we believe. If it's not in the Bible, why would you believe it? Think about that. There's nothing new. Anti-Semitism has been showing itself for a very long time. It's no different than racism, right? Hate somebody because they're different. Hate somebody because they don't look like me. They don't act like me. They don't worship like me. But the problem really goes farther and deeper than we might think. There are good people and bad people in any group of people, right? There's good white people, there's bad white people. There's good black people, there's bad black people. And I know good people who happen to be Muslim, and some I have met, not so good. I've met Jewish people that I love and admire. There are some I have met, you kind of got to question them just a little bit because they might have their own best interest far ahead of our own. someone said, well, any child of Abraham must be seeking a creator. And not quite. Not quite. If you look in the Bible, the followers of Korah, for instance, they rebelled against Moses. We read in Ezekiel 22:26. Her priests do violence to my law and profane my holy things. They make no distinction between the holy and the common, and they fail to distinguish between the clean and the unclean. They disregard my Sabbath, so that I am profaned among them. Even some of the priests in Israel chose to do wicked things. You see, when we reject our Creator, we choose evil. Now, the priests were not anti-Semitic by any stretch of the imagination, but they chose evil because they chose their way over the way of the Creator. I've met really, really wonderful people from Saudi Arabia. Thankfully, I have not met anyone from Saudi Arabia that I would consider evil, but I've only met a few. Who are actually from Saudi. The problem isn't what you look like or what your family tree is, how you live, how you worship. The problem is mankind. We will find in every group of people, a small portion, sometimes a large portion, who would rather promote hate or even violence simply because they have chose to be ignorant of good and embrace evil. Again, right? Don't bother me with the facts. My mind's made up. Jonah and Nineveh is another good example of this. Jonah hated the Ninevites, but God said, go there, say this. He didn't want to go. Jonah may have not been anti-Semitic, may have been prejudiced, but think of it that way. There's no difference. If you choose to hate an entire group of people just because one or two or 50, might be bad, doesn't mean that everybody out of that group is bad. I can think of very few entire groups that were entirely wicked. May have been more than I think over history, but only very few come to mind. When we think about professionals, I know some very, very intelligent people that might fall into this category, right? They may be extremely wise. They may be good doctors. They may be good lawyers, if you can have a good lawyer. But some of them are far more evil than criminals I've met. And I've met a few of them too. Some people, you would think should know better. They've either never been taught anything different. All they have ever been taught is to choose hate and darkness over love and life. And there's a lot of Christians that fall into this. They'll promote their denominational doctrine instead of the word of the Creator because they're ignorant of what's in the Bible that they claim to represent. Antisemitism or hate of any kind should not be a Christian value. Shouldn't even be a Christian doctrine. Let's just put it that way. There's some Jewish people who fall into this category. They will try to promote hate, violence, and evil over good. And then they'll stand back and say, well, I'm Jewish. You can't hate me. That's anti-Semitic. Well, if you happen to be Jewish and you're promoting hate, and I disagree with you, that's not anti-Semitism. That's me telling you you shouldn't be promoting hate, violence, and evil. I'm not judging a whole group, not being anti-Semitic. I'm just looking at the individual at that point. You see, to stereotype or judge an entire group because of the actions of a few is just foolish. It's perfectly okay to judge someone as an individual who is wicked or evil, promoting hate and violence over love and righteousness. You know, the Creator himself judges the children of Abraham, the ones who opposed Moses, the priests who were defiling his temple. Don't think for a moment that if you're a Christian, you're safe from his righteous judgment. You are not. You are not. I was asked one time, well, how do we fight evil and ignorance? And my answer, I think, fell on deaf ears. Because my answer was, we fight evil and ignorance with the faith of Abraham. We display our faith. We stand on the sacred word of our Creator, and we shine a light into the darkness. We speak truth into the lies, and we do not allow the minority who are evil or who speak evil to speak for the majority who are good. Antisemitism, racism, hate, they all go hand in hand. They have no place among Christian values. They have no place among even Jewish values. That's just something to think about until next time. And if you want to learn more, of course, the books are available at authorjerrymitchell.com. I would appreciate if you are so interested, folks, getting some of those. And, you know, we're coming up on that time of year when people are thinking about gifts, right? Folks make great gifts, just saying. Anyway, something to think about until next time. And until then, I do wish you many, many blessings, everyone.